Hi, I'm so glad that you joined us. So we're just taking a little break to look at what God is doing in the lives of women and to connect women with women in this live stream format and to hear the incredible stories of different women at CCC. So today we have with us my beautiful friend, Susie Krabacher, and she is the founder of Haiti Children. She has an orphanage. She takes care of 119 orphans in Haiti, 63 of them that are handicapped. Some of them are severely handicapped. So she has a big heart and a big story. And her husband's name is Joe. And we have here with us too Floyd. He is on camera. Doesn't go anywhere without his mom. But so I am just going to ask you a couple questions, if that's okay. And we'll get to know Susie a little bit better. So Susie, you know, I think it's in the mind and heart. I know it's in my mind and heart. How did God save you, and how did He take a girl from Colorado all the way to Haiti and, you know, take care of almost 120 orphan kids?
Well, when I was 8, I will never forget the day. I lived on kind of a farm, and I used to walk in the fields and pray. We were from a real Bible-thumping Church of Christ family, very, very strict, and I really believed in hell. And so I thought, if God takes me and I'm praying, I'm definitely not going to go to hell. And then I just remember thinking about, at that time I was being abused.
Mm-hmm.
My brother and I both were sexually, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I just remember hearing our preacher say that Sunday before that God is not going to give you anything that you can't handle. So it just dawned on me like a flash of light. So He must think I'm the toughest little girl in the world, the strongest little girl in the world,
Yeah.
because I am going through so much. And I thought, I love Him for that. I love Him that He thinks I can do this. And I just promised myself, and I promised I would always be with Him, and He would always be with me. And
how old were you?
8.
Okay.
But I was a very mature 8-year-old. I had lived a lot of lives at 8 years old. And I remember just giving my life to Him, and also, it wasn't on my heart, but after I gave my life to Him, I promised if He would help me live, through this, that I would make sure no other little girls had to go through this.
I love that.
That I would tell.
That's powerful. I love that. So you were saved?
Oh yeah, I got baptized like immediately after.
Okay. And so tell us, so then what happened after you got saved, and what did your life look like up until
Well,
an adult?
Eventually I was put in foster care because I had gone to school with so many bruises on me so many times that one of my little friends' mothers asked me what's happening, and I told her everything. So the state took me away from my parents and put me in foster care. My little brother should have been put in foster care, but there was only one. And he didn't get to go. So his abuse continued. He eventually killed himself.
Yeah.
But and that really resolved my heart more to keep my promise to God that I was not going to let this happen silently to children. And when I married my husband, I had a job trying to sell furniture and trying to help him. We lived on Main Street here in Colorado, Aspen, Colorado. And I was just really not very good at business. And one day my husband told me, "You're just not really very good at business."
I know, which is so amazing considering where God took you, you know.
Totally.
And I always tell people, you know, sometimes if you hear a big testimony, there's always a big story behind the person that people sometimes don't hear. They see, you know, the big ministry or the you know, the big business,
and they think you're a natural,
but they don't realize that there was a lot of struggle, and so that's why I love that you're sharing the struggle behind the story. What got you to the point that you were able to do it? So you married Joe.
I married Joe. Best decision other than giving my life to Christ that I've ever made. And so I started this business, and he came home one day and told me, this is a failure. You've gone through our whole life savings. And I was livid. I was going to teach him a lesson. So I went and locked myself in the closet, and I wouldn't come out. I blew my nose on his shirts in there and cried my eyes out.
That's so good.
And that night when he went to bed, I snuck out, still hoping to punish him and make him feel terrible for what he said to me. And I went to get some food, and I went to turn on the television really quietly, and on the television was a documentary about Mongolian sewer children who lived in Mongolia in sewers because they were all orphaned, abandoned, or mistreated. I'm like, I forgot my promise to God. No wonder I'm a failure at business. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Selling furniture is not what I'm good at.
Wow.
But I have such a heart for little kids because I was one of those little kids that was so completely tortured. So when he woke up the next morning, I had coffee made, I had his breakfast done. I said, I know what I'm going to do, honey. I'm going to sell some of this furniture. Right? I'm going to buy a plane ticket to Mongolia. And he's like, I think that's a great idea. I think that's what are you going to do in Mongolia? And I'm like, well, I want to help some of those kids. And at least I can hold them. And I went to church that following Sunday, and I asked for prayer from people at church. And after that Sunday service, a gentleman came up to me and goes, I don't think that you have to go all the way to Mongolia to help children. Please, I just came back from Haiti. Let me show you what there is there that you can do for so much less money. And if you've got the time, and he goes, you don't have to have a lot of money. So I changed my ticket, and I went to Port-au-Prince, Haiti instead. 2 weeks later, I was on a plane.
I think it's really neat the way it was a closed door, the business not succeeding, but then an open door, and then you really were willing to walk through whatever God put in front of you. You said to me, I know before this, you felt like it was providential, really, that your call to Haiti was providential in the great plan of God.
Absolutely, and the fact that Joe was so open-minded to me doing that. He's like, I'm making enough money now that you don't have to work, and your dream has always been that if you didn't have to work, you wanted to take care of children. So this is the time to do it. So I got to Haiti, and completely unprepared. Just thought I would go and hold babies, which was not God's plan for me at all. I thought maybe I'd sponsor a child, maybe we would adopt a child. I just really didn't know. So the minute we hit the ground, I went to, I found a driver. There weren't taxi cabs in Haiti, but I found a driver from the hotel that was willing to take me to what I asked for, take me to the poor areas of Haiti. So I got
You're by yourself?
By myself.
Okay.
Get in the car with this guy who I didn't know, in my high heels, in a skirt, with a fanny pack, with a few bucks, and really nothing, a little water. He dropped me off in Cité Soleil, which is, according to the UN, the hottest spot and the most dangerous slum on planet Earth. And he said, this is where the poor people live. And he stayed, I kept looking over, and I was walking around, and I was just wanting to understand this kind of poverty because I'd never seen anything like it in my life.
Right.
Next thing I know, he's gone. He left me there.
And you see the poverty, you see the kids?
Yeah, and the taxi guy leaves. So I'm stuck there. I had to spend the night in the slum.
Is that
It's not like there were roads.
So what was God doing in your heart then?
I wasn't really afraid because I didn't think, well, they're not going to hurt, I was naive. I'm like, well, they're not going to hurt me. I'm here to help. Well, that was not a very bright assumption. Before I knew it, it was dark. There was a little boy there that spoke some English, and I said, I need a place to sleep. And I had the most calm, I wasn't afraid. I'm like, I'm just going to sleep here, and in the morning I'll find my way back to the road, and I'll go back to the hotel, which is exactly what happened. But when I slept there, I slept with 17 other people.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
15 of them were children. That night I got bit by a rat. I realized they had no water, no food, And when the sun came up, they were all, it was like an exodus from this slum. Everybody was going to try to find work or food, and I was walking with them out to try to find the road. And I got back to the hotel and I called Joe and I'm like, you know, I know exactly what I can do here.
Oh,
These people need food.
Well, you knew somehow that you could get them the food they needed.
Oh,
and then
that wasn't even a question.
Is that
you know,
right?
I'm thinking in my head, it cost so little to buy beans and rice here. You know, I had done a little research before I made the phone call. I'm like, Joe, please sell the couch. We had a really nice couch, and I'm like, sell the couch,
so
send me the money.
So you're selling your stuff literally to go there and to start a ministry. So how did you get from, I mean, you have the heart, to what you have now, which, and I know we want to hear about all the things that you have now, which is really remarkable.
Yes, yes.
How did you go from wanting it to actually making it happen? And I don't know either how long you've been doing this.
It's 26 years.
26 years.
Started from that one little feeding canteen. Okay. I rented for $200 a year a little building in that slum, and just started hiring people to do the cooking. And so that grew. It was very successful. We had to deal with a lot of gang members because it was a slum, but feeding their children, they protected us, and that grew into a very large school. We started a school in 1995, and then that grew into, that was going so well, and people were supporting it, and because I didn't take a salary and we had almost zero overhead, it was really 100% of every dollar went to the cause. That was kind of unheard of back then. So it was successful. Then we built, well, I started working at the government hospital because there was an abandoned baby unit in the back where they kept all the handicapped children. And I couldn't believe that, you know, this was like an asylum with no windows, only one door. The first time I walked in there were 17 children, 2 of which were already passed away, and nobody had even found them. So
how long were you spending in Haiti at this point? Like,
every month.
Every month? Were you going there
a
month and then coming back a month? Were you?
No, I was going, at first I was going a week every month because I didn't have a staff. You know, I had a very tiny staff. And as we started taking in children to actually live with us and raise, mostly handicapped because other orphanages wouldn't take them, then I had to come back here and raise money. I didn't realize, you know, that is such a huge component of any ministry.
Yeah.
You've got to support it, you've got to pay your staff.
Yeah.
We take care of about 5,000 people a week now.
So now, how much money do you have to raise to sustain? And you need to give us all the stats of what you got going, I know.
Yeah.
How much money do you have to raise every month or every year, you know, to sustain it? How many employees do you have? How many kids are you are you taking care of?
In our 2 schools, we have about 750 kids.
Yeah.
We have mobile clinics which go into the mountains, and that's a ministry too because we pray over them.
Okay.
And so we serve 4 villages that are, you know, there are about 10,000 people in those 4 villages.
Wow.
So I'm going to say maybe we have 2,000 patients a month. And then we have our static clinic on our campus. So that clinic treats our very, very local village. We have a water program that we supply about 10,000 gallons a day. So we've got 3 of those. So you kind of lose count of how many people you're actually serving because we do so many things that we don't see. Like people can come to the well, it's chlorinated. We now have a COVID prevention outreach where we're supplying a lot of masks and hand sanitizer and soap, and doing conferences where, you know, sometimes we'll have 500 people that we're trying to teach. You know, this in Haiti it was believed that this was a white person's disease and that black people couldn't get it, and people were not really, you know, trying to take the precautions. So that, I think we've saved quite a few lives because now they know that yes, you can get it too.
Well, I think you've proven Joe wrong. I think you're a pretty successful businesswoman now.
Well,
He'd probably say the same thing too.
He's very, very proud of me. It was, you know, first of all, I had a 10th grade education. I had to quit school in 10th grade when my foster care was up and I had to go back home. I just ran away. So I quit school and got a job, had an apartment when I was 15, started trying to take care of my little brother, got involved with some things that I'm not too proud of.
Wow. Well, so how much money do you have to raise?
Annually about $1.5 million. And you know, it's our overhead is extremely low, but we take care of a lot of disabled and terminally ill children. So there's always someone that's got to go to the hospital. We have a staff of medical care providers. We have 3 doctors, 8 nurses.
That's unbelievable.
And they're,
I mean, it's just incredible.
For every 4 children, we have a house mother.
Wow.
We have a therapy center, which I'm incredibly, I'm telling you, I have never witnessed a real miracle that I could say, oh, absolutely, that was supernatural. I have seen unexplainable miracles on that campus.
And the main, you know, and just for you guys that are listening, one of the main reasons why I invited Susie was because she told me a testimony of one of her kids, and I'd love to hear a lot of the testimonies, but before we get into the testimony of T. David, which is amazing, it's a beautiful testimony, what's the viewpoint of the people in Haiti on these kids that are handicapped? You know, no one was wanting to rescue them, and you know, you have this great ministry. So how do they view these kids, you know, when someone has a handicapped child, what happens to that child?
Well, I'm going to be super candid.
Yeah.
They're called cocoa bays in Haiti, and cocoa bay means something that's less than human. It's not like they have a place to go or to get therapy that's free of charge. Most of the children who are born with you know, something that you can see is wrong with them, they're just left to die or they're thrown away. There's actually a place in Haiti that a lot of the women who bring their disabled children to us now to teach them how to take care of them have told us about this place where a lot of their neighbors who have children who have these disabilities, they throw them off the cliff. We started this ministry that we have women going on donkeys with megaphones and a phone number on the t-shirt saying, if you have a child that's born that looks different, call this number. So now we have hundreds of women bringing their handicapped children, and we're teaching them that this is a blessing. And we give since often the women are ostracized if they don't destroy the child, we're giving them a community where you are safe to be with your handicapped child, and we give them, you know, food, free physical therapy.
So do you take the mom and the kid and the child?
They come every day to the therapy center.
Okay.
And they form their own community because these women are, first of all, they're very strong to be ostracized from their community, and oftentimes their husband will leave. And it's very tempting to give up the child and have a normal life. But we're telling them, you know, maybe we can even hire you, and you know, you can support yourself. And a lot of times we have 170 employees, so there are employment opportunities, especially for women with handicapped children and for handicapped adults. We hire handicapped children. Our ministry is not all about disabilities anymore because a lot of the children that we took in that were thrown away, and I'm not exaggerating when I say they were thrown away, they're now, because they got therapy, or braces, or the operation for hydrocephalic syndrome, these kind of things, the child can be completely normal if they get that care when they're little. So a lot of the kids that came to us were, you know, pronounced terminally ill because that operation we don't do in Haiti. So we just take them to the DR, to the Dominican Republic. So a lot of our kids came to us handicapped, but they're not anymore. And then the situation with T. David.
Right, and this was, this is such a beautiful story. Yeah, and take us, you know, from the time that he was little and how long it's been and to what happened to him.
Yeah.
But I mean, all of these kids in their own way are miracles.
Oh, absolutely.
That you know, were able to believe in them. I love the Lord's heart that he put in you, and where he took, you know, what the enemy means for evil, sometimes God turns it for good. And what a beautiful story and what you've done. And you've not only has it changed your life, but it's changed all of these little kids' lives. Just right before we talk about T. David, can you tell, before the break, you told me about, or before we started this, you told me about what the kids are actually doing with some of their money and how you've taught them to tithe. Can you just say that really quick?
Yes, and I'm so proud of that. I never thought I would be a gushing mom, but I am so proud of these kids. Not that some of them don't drive me crazy sometimes when they're turning teenagers, but the kids, when they turn 14, all of them, whether you're handicapped or not, you have to do something to earn an allowance. Whether it's you can sit in your wheelchair and you can fold clothes, or you can watch this child you know, for the day. You help the house mothers with chores. So they each get an allowance. And it wasn't, I remember when I first started getting an allowance and my mom told me I had to pay 10% to Jesus. I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it took a while to get them to understand the process. But now when the children turn 18, by Haitian law, they have to leave the orphanage unless they're handicapped. So they have, when they leave, a bank account with enough money for 2 or 3 months rent. So that's a plus. But the coolest thing that I've ever seen happen on that mountaintop in which my children live is that they were told that they had to give 10% to the church. We have a church on campus, and they could choose what they wanted that ministry to be. So after, you know, a lot of thought and discussion, there are lots and lots of elderly widows on that mountaintop. A lot of them are over 100 years old. And my kids decided they wanted to take care of the widows. They showed me the passage in the Bible.
I love this so much.
So they come to me with this passage in the Bible, which of course we all know about, you know, taking care of widows and orphans and fatherless.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we're fatherless, but we're going to take care of the widows. So orphans are taking care of widows.
It's so good. I wrote it down, you know, James 1:27, right? Pure and undefiled religion.
And they love those widows. They walk, you know, up that dusty mountain, 115-degree heat to deliver their monthly basket of food, and they pray with them. And they take them out of their little lean-tos and let them walk around a little bit, and they sing with them, and they've formed their little family. They have 34 grandmas.
And so they're feeling good about this ministry too. And the widows.
It gives them such a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. You know, we just finished our Bible study, and our Bible study was, a lot of it was about how Jesus just lifted his heart of compassion to lift, you know, those that need justice, and to give them justice, to give them righteousness. And he's got a generous eye. And that's so close to the heart of God, what you've done and what you've trained the kids to do. It's
one
beautiful.
of my little boys, his name's Ronald, just in case he gets to see this, he has a radio show that all of my kids, I teach them to be speakers. You know, if you've got a story, then you need to tell it because it's a testimony, okay? And so he has a radio show where he does a ministry to people who are involved in gangs and, you know, people who are in slums. He visited the penitentiary for boys, the juvenile penitentiary. He's changed our little area. We do have gangs around our orphanage. He's gone in and started a church, his own little church. He's 20 years old now, and he started his own little church. And he's a powerful speaker. And they're like, we have nothing, we'll never be anything. He's like, I was an orphan. I was sold with, Joe and I bought a building. He was part of the deal. That he was 4 years old, and he was sold with that building as a slave.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So, and now here he is, you know, speaking and preaching.
It's beautiful. It's just incredible. Well, I know we got to talk about T. David and what happened, because it's a miracle, and it just happened, right, recently.
Well, it's not so recently, it just keeps getting better. But T. David was brought into the government hospital, into the abandoned baby unit, which I took over in 1996. And so I started taking all the abandoned children and trying to process them out of that hospital, because it was rat infested, filthy, lots of AIDS, children dying of respiratory infections because of the dust and the tear gas, because we were in the middle of a police riot zone. So one day at the hospital, we had an elderly woman bring in a child. He was about 1.5 to 2 years old, and he was extremely like rigor mortis stiff and bent and crooked feet, everything that you can possibly imagine. He was kind of a mess, and we started taking care of him, and I think it took about 2 years to get him out of the hospital.
Wow.
So nobody has the time in Haiti to process a handicapped child, to give them an identity, and so we finally got him to the orphanage. He came to live with us.
So you have to name him in the hospital?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Well, some of them,
You're the mama.
if they come with, knowing their name, some of them know their name, then they have their name. But either the hospital will name them, once in a while I would get the privilege to name them. Usually an abandoned baby gets the name of the mayor in the district they were abandoned, which is why so many of them have the same name. So we took him home, and for 10 years he had the ability to swallow, so he could get his nutrition, he could hydrate, but sometimes we would have to use a feeding tube when he got sick. He was very prone to respiratory infections and fevers and that sort of thing. 10 years. Every time I would go to Haiti, I would sit by his bed and I would stroke him, I would talk to him, I would read to him, along with all the other little children in the room that were also sick. But I remember I used to pat him, I'd roll him over and rub his shoulders, and we had our physical therapist, so we kept him moving as much as we could. But I would roll him over and I would pat him and talk to him, and every time I would always ask, is there any difference? Is there any difference? And my doctor, one particular doctor, had worked for me for 10 years, and he's like, Susie, he's a vegetable. He's never going to get well. He's never going to get well.
Those are powerful words, right?
Yeah, and I was, I was resolved that if that's true, it's true. But every morning of my life, I pray that those children will get well.
Amen.
That they will stand and that they will walk.
So good.
That they will speak. I do not believe that any human being can tell me the results of the future for one of those children. I mean, look at me. I was a 10th grade education foster kid, just everything you can imagine that was against me, okay? I know that God can do it. So I was also okay that if God didn't heal him on this side of heaven, then that's fine. He's still my child.
So you never gave up? I mean,
I never I never ever give up. And I would have people come and cast out Satan and pray over him, and just vigilant over all of the kids. We've got 63 kids like that.
Right.
So with David, though, I just, for some reason, I don't know why, I felt like he was hearing me. I just felt like it.
Yeah.
So when he turned 14, we like all the kids, we had a cake and we celebrated each other's birthdays, and the employees saw him move. On his own, he moved. He's never moved.
Now, were you there during this
I
party?
wasn't there. Okay. And they didn't tell me. It's like, the way I found out is, it's gonna make me cry. I came to the orphanage that month, as usual, and I was scolding one of the kids because he was being rude to one of the little girls, and I was scolding, and all of a sudden I feel something grab me from behind and pull me, almost like trying to pull me down, and I looked down, and keep in mind, I know this kid like the back of my hand because he's been with me for so long. It's his hands.
Yeah, amazing.
It's T. David's hands. And I turn around and the employees were like, you know, they wanted to see the look on my face, and it was him. And the first words that that kid ever spoke to them and to me was, he pointed to his head and he said,
wow.
intelligent.
Intelligent.
He wanted me to know that he was not a vegetable. He had been hearing this all these years.
And you had a feeling the whole time
It was
that
just
he was
a feeling.
Yeah.
It was a Holy Spirit feeling but when he looked at me, it would be like he was looking at something in between me and him and not really connecting with me. It was like, you know, now sometimes I think, well, maybe he was looking at his angel that was between me and him,
Yeah.
you know, because he was clearly focused on something, and it wasn't me, but it was like in between us. And I just, when I saw his eyes, and when he realized that I realized that it was him, and he was telling me he was smart,
Yeah. Oh.
I've got the video of the look on his face. It was like, I finally got to tell you that it mattered. And then he patted my arm because I'd been patting his arm for 10 years.
See, he felt it the whole time.
He thought that was what would bring joy to me because I always did it to him. And so it
just really makes you realize.
Oh, and now he goes to school.
Oh, I love that.
He is brilliant. He's not just intelligent. He has cerebral palsy and has a really hard time controlling himself, but he uses a walker so he can walk, or his wheelchair. Gets around all over the campus with that wheelchair. He's got opinions. He has...
Oh, that's great.
He gets really, really jealous when he sees disorder.
Isn't that something?
He's kind of you know, if something's wrong with one of the kids, he'll wheel his wheelchair over and he'll tell one of the house mothers, you know, he'll get the help for the child.
So what happened that, I mean, it's a miracle.
It's
a total miracle, but what happened? It was the day of his birthday, you said, right?
It was his birthday.
And what happened that all of a sudden he could talk?
We have no medical explanation for that. There is none.
Did he wake up that day?
No, he's always been awake. You know, he's always been awake, and he'd sleep. You know, he'd close his eyes, but he just wasn't there. Or if he was in there, he was being. I think he was broken free from chains that day.
Oh, that's so awesome.
I know it was from prayer because something broke him out.
Yeah.
And he never went back, and he never stops. I mean, it's like he's just always on the go. When he sleeps, when he wakes up, he's like gone. You know, it's like he's not wasting time anymore.
So how long was it that you were praying? Was it 10 years or 14?
10 years. Well, when I got him, so let's say 12, because I got him when he was almost 2. So I started praying I pray over them, I pray with them, we anoint with oil. We have the holy oil. We have a lot of visitors that pray over my children.
I love that you're sharing this testimony because some of us, you know, we've been praying for different things. Some person might not have a handicapped child that they're believing for. I know there's people that have autistic kids. There's learning disabilities, different things, and just to not give up. This really helps people to encourage them not to give up in prayer. You know, that persistence. We say you have chutzpah. You know, you just keep on it and don't give up. And I love that you believed in him, even when, you know, that word was spoken. He'll never, you know, he'll just always be a vegetable, and that's just not true. So what does he call you?
Oh, everybody calls me mom, 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 mom. I've got.
You have 119 kids?
Yes, and I do feel like I am their mom. At least I'm the only version of their mom. Their house mothers are very special to them. They adore their house mothers. Most of my employees have been with me at least 10 years, so they know the children and they get to sleep with them, and you know, I come and go. One of the things that I have told my kids, especially my girls, is that you need to know that I'm not a normal mom. A mom is supposed to stay with you, to be with you, to never leave you. So I'm not a normal mom. You, when you are a mom, you have to dedicate yourself to your child. You'll never abandon your child. You'll never orphan your child. And the only reason I go and I come and I go and I come is because I have to take care of you, and I have to raise money because there's so many of you.
But you said Joe's giving him cell phones, so now they call you here.
In Haiti, cell phones are free. They're very cheap phones. So we gave them permission to have phones. And I'm telling you, these kids blow our phones up.
Yeah, I bet they do. I don't know how you take which one.
You know, we pay for their minutes, and then they, and it's also a tool when they need discipline, they get their phone taken away.
Yeah.
And they don't get a phone until they're teenagers, but you know, they live on a campus where it's very unsafe to go outside, so they don't have a big social life. So this gives them a way to become social and to have friends on the outside.
That's so great. So how, like with T. David and some of these other kids, will they? You said he's in school. How far will he be able to go in school in Haiti?
T. David, well, in Haiti, a child has to leave an institution, orphanage, at the age of 18, unless they're handicapped. So T. David will probably always live with us because there aren't sidewalks that he could use his wheelchair, and he would be extremely ostracized because he's handicapped.
Yeah,
so he'll probably always be with us. However, he's very, very, very smart. So I think that his level of education can go all the way to university if we can do it via computer.
Okay.
You know, there's the universities, there's not ramps, it's just very difficult for a handicapped person to function in Haiti, especially because people think they have a demon.
Yeah. Wow. And I know we have a video of T. David, which we're going to show, but you know, you said you've dealt with some of the demonic too on some of these kids, and I know Haiti's pretty well known for that.
Yes.
So what do you do about that? How do you minister to some of these kids that are coming out of you know, some real tough situations? And I know in closing, maybe you could talk about that child that you picked up in the pig pen.
Yeah.
And just to give people a picture of where you're pulling these kids out and how you're getting these kids off the streets, and that it's possible. You know, one woman from Aspen, Colorado, just going over there and actually rescuing these kids, and what you're doing is just amazing. Can you share with us the story about him? And then we're just going to close it with praying for your ministry and praying for you. God's going to bless you, because you don't have any kids of your own. These are spiritual, you know, children, and actually natural too. You taking care of them. But what you've done is just, I mean, it's inspiring to say the least. But could you share about him and just?
So Junior, when you get an abandoned child, it has to come to you through the social affairs office. You can't just go and take a child because somebody says, I don't want my child anymore. It's illegal. It's called kidnapping. And it's also trafficking. So when we get a child, we are given that child, we're given papers for that child, then eventually we've got to go to get a birth certificate for the child. They start a file at Haiti's government office called Social Benefits. So one day I was there at that office getting paperwork on a child that had a 2-year-old baby who had hydrocephalic syndrome and was abandoned. And I had been given permission to take him and get my paperwork. So I was there, and I remember sitting with that little guy in my truck waiting for my turn to go in, and I heard these pigs just screeching like they were being butchered. And I was, at first I'm thinking, you know, it's Haiti, you know, you hear roosters, pigs, dogs, you know, but it just kept going and going. So I handed the baby to my driver and I said, you know, I'll be right back, I gotta see what's going on over there. So I went over there, and the little boy was black and really dirty, covered with mud. He was in a barbed wire encasement where there were probably 6 or 7 pigs in there, and he was fighting with the pigs to get orange rinds out of their mouth to eat. Yeah. And I couldn't process it. You know, at first I just couldn't process it. And then it dawned on me, this is a child in a pig pen with barbed wire. So I crawled under there, and I was just gonna, he looked like he was about 4, and he was very afraid of me, but I grabbed him and started, you know, rubbing him and got him to just be still, and I got out from under the barbed wire, put him in the truck, and I said, let's get out of here. I knew, because I'd been working in Haiti for so many years, that in Haiti there's no law against child slavery. It's called restabec. They're called restabecs. And that means to live with. But basically it's a child that's kept outside, and they do, you know,
So you
housework.
took him,
I
and
took
he,
him.
and he now lives with you. You rescued him
I rescued him, and I didn't...
out of the pig pen.
Out of the pig pen.
Yeah.
He bit me.
Uh-huh.
He fought with me. He wouldn't, for years, he wouldn't let anybody touch him. And, you know, he's still really, I believe he has a demon. He jumps up on the rafters of his house, and he still growls. But, you know, there have been so many more moments that he's a kid, you know, a child that wants something, you know, wants to be fed or wants to be held.
Yeah.
And there's that. And that's my little boy.
You know, you said in one of the quotes of yours that I happened to hear was, "We are all precious and deserve a chance." And
people are adorable.
I love that.
You know, these little kids are. When he's doing this behavior that's demonic, I've started on a global prayer line that I've got people all over the world praying for him.
And his name is
Junior.
Junior. So we're gonna pray for Junior and pray for all the kids.
Do you hear my dog snoring?
I do. See how relaxed he's meant for the camera. Floyd likes it here. He's been just relaxed. He's a natural. He's gonna have his own show here soon. Oh, he's waking up now. We're talking about him. But so let's just join together, and let's pray with Susie and for these kids and for this awesome ministry that God did through her. But I love that you had the yes in you to say it. You know, when the closed door, or you thought you weren't a successful businesswoman, although you ended up being one, very successful, more successful than most of us could ever hope to be. Honestly, which is so amazing. But let's just have a little prayer together. And if you could remember Susie and what she does, I think that means a lot to the Lord. Let's pray together. Anyway, I love you so much. Father, I thank you for Haiti children. I thank you for Susie and for Joe and what they've done, and just loving these kids and showing the love of Jesus to this orphanage. We just pray as a church, dedicating that property, that land unto you, God. And what Susie's done, we just commit every child to your care, that nothing is outside of your reach, God. You have a mighty arm to save. And for the holiness of your name, we pray that you would, even though you already have, infiltrate that community, that school, and may many, 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 many testimonies, even more testimonies of love, forgiveness, redemption, miracles, signs and wonders come out of this orphanage for your honor and for your glory. And I pray that you bless Susie and Joe for their sacrifice. I know financially they've sacrificed time in every way. And so we just pray you bless them in Jesus' name. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you.
Well, Susie, I love getting with you so much. I don't get to see you that much because you're gone all the time to Haiti, but we're so proud of you.
Thanks.
And you're an inspiration, I know, to me, that it doesn't matter how educated we are, if we just say yes to God.
If you've got the prayer behind you, you know, I can't tell you how much I want to say thanks to people for praying, because I need it, these kids need it, and it works. It works.
It does. Well, love you so much, and thanks for bringing Floyd. There you go.